This is what happens when your car hits 100,000 miles, and why the mechanic working on your vehicle does something completely different when it's their own car sitting in the shop. Back in the 1960s and 70s, the 100,000-mile mark meant your car was probably worn out. Odometers only displayed 5 digits because manufacturers never expected you'd need a sixth. That's changed completely, and today the average car getting junked has over 156,000 miles on the odometer, while the average vehicle on American roads is 12.8 years old, which is a record high. Modern cars can absolutely reach 200,000 miles and beyond. But here's the thing that should bother you. Only about 1% of all vehicles actually make it to 200,000 miles. 1%. That gap between what cars can do and what they actually achieve isn't a manufacturing problem. It's an owner behavior problem. And a lot of it comes down to what happens right around this 100,000-mile checkpoint. Let's talk about what mechanics actually do at 100K that most car owners never hear about. The 100,000-mile service isn't some arbitrary psychological milestone that dealerships invented to sell you stuff. Several critical components in your car simultaneously reach their replacement intervals at this point. Your timing belt, if you have one, hits its end of life somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000 miles, and iridium spark plugs are typically due right at 100,000. Extended life coolant reaches its replacement interval around this time too. Suspension components like bushings and ball joints start showing wear, and your transmission fluid has degraded significantly, regardless of what the marketing materials told you when you bought the car. This convergence is why the 100K service matters mechanically. It's not made up. Let's start with the single most catastrophic thing that can happen to your engine, and the service mechanics never skip on their own cars. About 90% of modern engines are what's called interference engines, and if your vehicle has a timing belt, a broken belt doesn't just leave you stranded. When that belt snaps while the engine's running, your pistons slam directly into your valves. The repair bill lands somewhere between $3,000 and $8,000, and that often totals the car entirely. What makes this so dangerous is the complete absence of warning signs. No check engine light appears. No weird noise develops. No gradual decline occurs. The belt just breaks, and one second you're driving while the next second your engine is destroyed. What mechanics do on their own vehicles tells the real story. When they replace the timing belt, they always replace the water pump at the same time, along with the tensioners and idler pulleys. All of those components hide behind the timing belt, and the water pump costs maybe an extra $100 in parts. But if you skip it, and that water pump fails 6 months later, you're paying for all that labor again, just to access it. Mechanics understand this math, and that's why they do the complete job once and never think about it again. When a shop offers you a belt-only replacement at a lower price, understand what that means. You're gambling that every other component in that area will last another 60,000 to 100,000 miles. Mechanics don't take that gamble on their own cars. The biggest disconnect between what manufacturers tell you and what mechanics actually do involves something called lifetime transmission fluid. Automakers started marketing this concept in the late 1990s, with BMW pioneering the approach in 1998. Toyota, Ford, and GM all followed with the same pitch. This fluid never needs to be changed because it's designed to last the life of the vehicle. One veteran mechanic explained the catch. Lifetime means the lifetime of the transmission, and if it dies at 100,000 miles, well, the fluid lasted its lifetime. Most automotive engineers define a car's lifetime as 100,000 to 150,000 miles, which is the window manufacturers engineer for. Not 200,000, not 250,000. What really exposes this as marketing is what the actual transmission manufacturers recommend. ZF and ASIN, the companies that build these transmissions, recommend fluid changes at 50,000 to 60,000 miles for severe service conditions. The transmission manufacturers themselves contradict the lifetime claims of the automakers installing their products. Mechanics handle their own vehicles differently. One Toyota Level 3 technician reported changing the transmission fluid on his personal Honda every 20,000 miles, and that car reached 280,000 miles. Professional consensus against lifetime fluid claims runs strong, with most mechanics recommending changes every 30,000 to 60,000 miles. One nuance matters here, though. For high-mileage vehicles that have never had the fluid changed, some specialists recommend leaving it alone, because worn clutch material suspended in old fluid might actually help engagement at that point. Other mechanics say it's better late than never, but they suggest using the drain and fill method rather than an aggressive flush. The profession remains genuinely divided on this specific scenario. But they all agree on one thing, which is that if you're starting with a healthy transmission, you should change that fluid regularly and ignore the lifetime marketing. If I had to pick one maintenance item that car owners almost universally skip, but mechanics never skip, it would be brake fluid. Brake fluid is hygroscopic, which means it absorbs moisture from the air. Fresh brake fluid has a boiling point around 440 degrees Fahrenheit, while water boils at 212 degrees. When your brake fluid reaches just 3% water content, you've entered dangerous territory. Under heavy braking situations like coming down a mountain, repeated stops in traffic, or any situation where your brakes work hard, that fluid heats up. Moisture in the fluid can boil, and when fluid becomes vapor, you get air in your brake lines. Air compresses while hydraulic fluid doesn't, and the result is spongy brakes, increased stopping distance, and potentially complete brake failure. Manufacturer recommendations on brake fluid vary wildly. Toyota says every 2 years or 20,000 miles, while many manufacturers don't specify any interval at all. Mechanics replace brake fluid every 2 to 3 years, regardless of mileage, and they always replace it when doing brake pad or rotor work. A brake fluid flush costs about $80 to $150, while replacing a corroded ABS actuator from neglected brake fluid runs $1,200 to $1,700 or more. Mechanics understand those numbers, and that's why they never skip this service on their own vehicles. Buried in your owner's manual, there are actually 2 maintenance schedules. Everyone follows the normal schedule, but there's also a severe service schedule with more frequent intervals for everything. And industry surveys put the number of drivers who actually qualify as severe service somewhere between 62 and 80%. Almost none of them follow that schedule. Severe service conditions include repeated short trips under 5 miles because your engine never reaches full operating temperature, driving under 10 miles in freezing temperatures, extended idling, heavy traffic in extreme heat above 90 degrees, dusty or muddy or gravel roads, towing or carrying heavy loads, and stop-and-go commuting. That list probably describes your driving. If you live in a city, have a short commute, deal with traffic, or experience hot summers or cold winters, you probably qualify. What this means in practice is your oil change interval might need to drop from 7,500 miles to 3,750 miles, your transmission fluid needs more frequent changes, and your air filter needs more attention. Consumer Reports chief mechanic, John Ibbotson, explained that for older cars, he follows the severe duty maintenance schedule. His reasoning was simple: either pay now or pay more later. Master technician Bogie Latiner changes oil twice as often as her manufacturer's 15,000-mile interval. She's not being paranoid, she's being practical. Not everything a service advisor recommends is a scam, but you should know how the system works. A veteran service writer confessed to Edmunds that people think of the service advisor as a mechanic, but basically they're salesmen who get paid on commission. A former service advisor told CBC Marketplace that you have to upsell customers because service advisors are either compensated or have their jobs depend on production. That same Edmunds investigation found something telling. When comparing dealer-recommended service to the actual owner's manual, the dealer had almost doubled the service frequency in some cases. The manual said 60,000 miles, while the dealer recommended 12,000. Legitimate services at 100K include the timing belt if your car has one, water pump with that timing belt, spark plugs since iridium plugs are due right around 100K, brake fluid flush, and a comprehensive inspection of suspension, brakes, belts, and hoses. Questionable services include fuel injector cleaning when you have no drivability issues. GM actually has a technical service bulletin telling dealers not to perform injector flushing unless diagnosing a specific problem, and Toyota has a similar bulletin saying fuel induction cleaning is unnecessary unless addressing a drivability issue. If someone pushes fuel system cleaning at your 100,000 service and your car runs fine, that's an upsell. Fluid flushes that aren't due according to your owner's manual also fall into the questionable category, along with brake pad replacements when you still have 20 to 30% of pad life remaining and services at intervals far more frequent than what the manufacturer specifies. The owner's manual is your friend here. A 40-year industry veteran told Edmunds that he uses the owner's manual as the definitive guide, not dealer recommendations. AAA's 2025 data puts the average annual cost to own and operate a vehicle at $11,577, with maintenance, repair, and tires accounting for roughly $1,475 to $1,520 per year. A complete 100K service can run anywhere from $400 to over $2,000, depending on what your specific vehicle needs. The comparison that matters is between preventive and emergency repairs. Preventive maintenance costs 3 to 9 times less than emergency repairs. A timing belt replacement runs $400 to $1,000, but the engine damage from a broken timing belt costs $3,000 to $8,000 or more. Transmission fluid changes cost $80 to $350, while a transmission rebuild runs $4,500 to $6,000. A brake fluid flush costs $80 to $150, but an ABS actuator replacement from corroded brake components costs $1,200 to $1,700. Master technician Bogie Latiner put it simply: preventative maintenance is always going to be less expensive than the repair. Let's bring this back to where we started. Mechanics change fluids more frequently than manufacturers recommend, especially transmission fluid, regardless of lifetime claims. They replace the water pump with the timing belt every single time. They flush brake fluid on a schedule even when no manufacturer requires it. They follow the severe service maintenance schedule even when their driving might technically qualify as normal. They never use stop leak products or other quick fixes. And they use quality parts, not the cheapest aftermarket options, especially on safety-critical systems. John Ibbotson from Consumer Reports summed it up by saying, "It's not rocket science, and the better you take care of your car, the better it will take care of you." He also pointed out that taking care of a car is much more than oil changes because everything is connected, and when one part fails, it puts more strain on others. The 1% of vehicles that make it to 200,000 miles didn't get there by accident. They got there because their owners understood something fundamental. The 100,000-mile mark isn't when a car starts dying. It's when owners decide whether they're going to give their car a fighting chance at the next 100,000. The information to make that decision has always been available. It's in your owner's manual. It's in the severe service schedule nobody reads. It's in the maintenance practices that mechanics follow religiously on their own vehicles, but sometimes forget to mention when they're talking to customers. Now you know. What you do with that knowledge at your next 100K service is up to you.